Welcome to Alchemist.Camp, where we become better Elixir programmers by building things. And today we're going to build out some more functionality to the stat module from a few episodes ago and make use of Ecto for the first time in any Alchemist.Camp videos. So just a quick refresher for those of you who weren't there for that episode and want to know what this thing is. We've got a pretty simple module that is actually running as a submodule on the Alchemist.Camp website right now. And it gets stats for websites, Twitter profiles, and YouTube profiles. And I've just chosen the things that I personally want. This is my profile. This is the profile of my French buddy's blockchain-related teaching channel and site. And every so often, I've set it to go every 6 hours, every so often, this module will go out and get the following stats. It will get the number of subscribers you have on YouTube, the number of videos that are published, the number of views, the number of Twitter followers, and the Elixir rank. As you can see, I started this pretty early. Alchemist.Camp has only existed since December 3rd, so it's kind of interesting to see the stats go up, and I can also see what's the effect of people sharing it on Reddit, for example, which happened right at the new year. So actually that was me. I shared it, but a lot of people voted it up, and it sat at the top of the R Elixir subreddit for a while. Thank you, Redditors, by the way. So this is what it does, and right now we're not even using Ecto. We're not even using a database. It's just generating a CSV, and all of the profile information is hard-coded into the module like this. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a database. Then we're going to make a profile table that'll hold this information. The very first step is we're going to go into our mix file and add the dependencies we need. We need Ecto and we need Postgres. And Postgres is just the database adapter, so we're going to use this kind of uncommon looking syntax here to go with the highest version we can. And then Ecto, we're going to use version 2.2. So now we need to make a database user. So we'll do that from the command line with Postgres, psql-u, to use our master user, and create user stats, no super user because it's not one, inherit create db, create role. Now I've already done this, so this should fail. All right, role already exists. Then the next thing is to set the password. And we'll set it to stats. And there we go. Now we need to generate the repo with mix. It's mix ecto.gen.repo. Okay. When we ran ecto.gen.repo, it generated some default information for us in our config file. That includes the adapter, database, username, password, and hostname for your database configuration. And I changed the username and password from the default to stats. And then, as suggested by IEX, I added this config for the Ecto repos. And that's just going to be the name of your project.repo. Once that is done, we can go on to creating the database. The first thing we'll want to do with our database is create a table for profiles. like Rails or maybe some other frameworks you may be familiar with, Ecto uses migrations. Create profiles. This is not like what you'd get from using a Phoenix helper though. This is just an empty migration, and we'll have to give it all the information it needs. So we'll open it up. It should be inside priv, repo migrations. Okay, and we'll create a table and pass it a name as an atom. This one is called profiles. So let's see. Each profile is going to have the name of the person or the business that it's a profile of, their site's URL, their Twitter handle, and their YouTube channel ID. So we will just make all of those strings actually. YouTube and Twitter. We'll save that. And actually the name is going to be the page that gets loaded. So for example, right now on Alchemist.Camp, if you go to /stats/Alchemist, that loads its own stats. So these names are going to have to be unique. So the way you do that in Ecto is you create it normally as above, and then you also create unique index. Like so, and it's based on the table profiles. And then we pass in a list, and this is kind of cool. So we're just building our index off of the name, but you might have a relationship table where you model people that are following other people, and each relationship would have one follower and one leader, one follower and one followee. And it's perfectly fine if the same person follows lots of people or is followed by lots of people. But you wouldn't want to record duplicate information of the same person following the same person again and again. So you might create a unique index based off of both follower and followee. All right, we will run the migration. Right, now we have a table called profiles, and it has a unique index. Now we can fire up IEX and add some profiles. And we definitely need the mix file. All right, actually we do need one more thing. We need a schema. So let's make that right now. And we'll call this profile.ex StatWatch.profile of our Ecto schema. So we'll use ecto.schema. And we have to add each of the fields. So it's going to be pretty much the same as what we've got in our database. So we'll call that one URL. And that's one Twitter. And YouTube. Save that and recompile. Oh, right. The directory name should not have EX in it. All right. Recompile that. Okay. So if you're not familiar with Ecto, it's good to point out that Ecto doesn't work quite like Active Record works in Rails. Since Elixir is purely functional, Ecto is also functional, and you don't have a model that you're storing a whole bunch of behavior on. You've just got these schemas, which are essentially just structs or maps or dictionaries or whatever you want to call them. you create change sets with Ecto, which will have various rules they follow. You can do validations and update the repo with that change set. For example, we'll go to the main application and I'll copy out my own data right here. And I'll set up a variable called me and just set it equal to all of this. Okay, so I have this struct. It has a site, has a Twitter, has a YouTube. We can't actually do much with this bare struct though. Let me give you an example. So we have this struct here, and we can't put it into the repo. It's going to be StatWatch.repo.insert. So we get this error. The reason is you've got to have an ecto struct. It's got to be in the list of existing ones. So what we're going to do is we're going to use Kernel.struct to create it. First, we're going to alias a couple things. Otherwise, we'd be typing StatWatch a whole lot of times. Repo and profile. Okay, now, so we're going to use Kernel.struct to create a profile struct from the bare map we already stored. So now this can go into an Ecto repo, and even though there are a couple things that are not complete, we're going to insert it. The URL is nil because we called it site inside the application, and the name is nil because that just wasn't part of the struct. We'll pass this to Repo.insert. And we can see what's in the repo, or what's in the table, by looking at Repo.all and then the name of the table. Or I should say the name of the schema. And there we go. We have one entry, and that is Alchemist.Camp, and it's got a couple things missing. The way we update that is with a change set. In order to make the change set, the easiest way, and the way that you usually do it in an app, is you'll get an element from the repo, and you'll pass that into the repo when you're doing things. For example, we could set user to be Repo.get, and Repo.get takes the name of the schema, and it takes an ID. The ID here is 1. So there's our user, and we can delete it by simply passing it into delete. So it's a user repo.delete, and the user is gone. We can create it back, and we can't actually get it the way we just got it anymore because it's no longer the first ID, it's the second ID. But we can still get it pretty easily, even if we didn't know we're the second ID, by just using get by. Repo.get by, and that still takes the name of the schema. And then it takes a map where you specify whatever fields you want. Actually, it can be one or more fields. And we'll get it by Twitter, I guess. Don't have any good options here. And there we go, got a user. In order to update our user, we've got to make a change set. So change sets are basically just changes to be made, and they can be validated by Ecto before you run them. They're easy to test and so on. Ecto.Changeset.change, and then we specify the changes in here. And I'm just going to change the name. Like so. And we can see there's a change. It is valid. If we want to change more than one, we can do it like so. And this is just creating the change set. So we can see there are no errors from doing this kind of change. There's a valid flag, which is set to true. But in order to act on this change set, we have to pass that into Repo.update. And there we go. And if we do a Repo.get by, use the name, now we can, and it's a complete user. Okay, so this is exactly the profile data we want in for my own user. We also want to get the same for blocks. I'm just going to fix this up here because it's quicker. And blocks equals profile, and then all of that stuff. Blocks Repo.insert. Excellent. The two users are in. Now let's update the application itself. We don't need any of this anymore, so we'll get rid of it. We do need a couple of aliases though, so I'll add that in here. StatWatch.repo, and the same for the profile. And then our run function is going to change a bit. So we're going to get all the profiles from the database, and then we're just going to have each of them fetch stats and have each of them save. So we'll just do for profile, in all the profiles are going to be Repo.all profile. Do, and we'll fetch stats on the profile, and then after we do that, we will save the stats, or we will save the CSVs. And yes, we are bringing in the database so that we're not using CSVs forever, but this is an intermediate step. Okay, we'll save that, and we did change the name of the URL. We changed that from site to URL. So let's find anything with .site. Only one instance, that's not too bad at all. So we'll change that to .url. Okay, and now it should work. So I'm going to open up the stats directory. We've got one for Alchemist. We don't have one for blocks. Let's reload this. Actually, recompile. Then StatWatch.run. And we are querying database. Okay. Put them in a different directory, it looks like. Put them under priv static stats of this sub application rather than of the campsite application, which is what it normally does. And I believe that's just because I'm running IEX from this applications directory. So let's terminate the batch job and let's go up a level and start up the primary application. Okay, this looks worse than it is. Actually, what we've got to do is take everything from our config in StatWatch and it's got to go into the config for the main project. And that's because this is not an umbrella app. I just threw it in there. So when you've got one main app that's supervising a bunch of other apps, the configuration is the responsibility of the parent app. So here we go, and obviously this is just one running locally. All right, let's give this a shot. And it is compiling now, and it says it's generated. And here's the other file. Okay, now let's take a minute and do a quick recap of just everything we've covered today, because it was a fair amount. First, we added Postgres and Ecto to our mix file, and then we fetched the dependencies. After that, we used psql to create a new user for our app and give it a new password from the command line. Then we use ecto.gen.repo to generate our repo, ecto.create to create the database, ecto.gen.migration to create a migration in which we created a new table, and then ecto.migrate to run the migration. We didn't do this, but ecto.rollback is how you undo them. And then we messed around from the command line and basically saw how to do all the common operations. So we did Repo.insert to add a row to the table. We created a change set with ecto.Changeset.change and passed that to Repo.update in order to update a row of the database. We deleted a row with Repo.delete, and we used Repo.all to list all the rows in a table, and Repo.get to get a row by ID, and Repo.get_by to get a row based on one or more fields and their values. So obviously there's a lot more to learn about Ecto, but this is enough of the basics to get up and started and make a CRUD app. With that done, the next step for this project, for next episode, is to completely eliminate the need for the CSV files. I mean, that is kind of why we brought in a database. After that's done, then of course there's going to be some configuration to deploy something like this to Nanobox, which is what I'm using. So it's going to take a box file, and there are some differences with how the credentials and the configuration are handled, and we'll definitely go over them. If you found this useful, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe. And your challenge for next time is read through a bit of the docs on Ecto and see if you can make a foreign key. So make a database association. We're going to use this in the next episode when we've got stats that are associated with specific users. See if you can figure out how that works. And until next time, code on.